Ryan did agree on short notice to be our speaker today. Um, he's lived his whole life in Montgomery County, and he currently resides in the New Market area with his wife and two children. He's been in law enforcement for 26 years, starting his career as a jail deputy in 1994. In 98, he became a merit deputy and then a canine deputy the following year. In 2002, he went to Purdue University Police Department and was promoted to sergeant in 2003. In 2011, he left Purdue University and was appointed chief deputy under Sheriff Castile. He ran for sheriff in 2018 and began his first term as sheriff in 2019. In his spare time, he enjoys coaching his daughter on her softball team and spending time with his family and fishing. I give you Sheriff Needham.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you. And I'll preface this with this is the first Zoom meeting I've ever done as being the presentation. So I don't have a lot put together. I mean, normally on things like this, I rely on a PowerPoint in the interaction. One of the topics that was suggested was to speak about the COVID and how that affected our operations. So I put together a few things, and I'm going to talk about that, and then I'm certainly going to open it up to questions. I can't go anywhere right now without being asked several questions about everything going on. As we're all aware, the COVID virus, it's wreaked havoc on day-to-day operations, and we're certainly not immune. Obviously, what we do is essential. We remained open 24/7, fully staffed. But the big obstacle for me was having the jail. We're responsible for everything. Once you get booked into our facility, your safety, your welfare, everything, good or bad, it falls upon me. So we took it very serious. We're still taking it very serious. But when this started, our population was 215 inmates. Our jail capacity, official capacity, is 224. So we were near capacity when this first started. We've been as high as 271 inmates before, but we didn't have much room. So we met with the judges. We have a great working relationship with all the courts, and met with them because we kind of saw what was getting ready to come down the pike. So we put together a list, submitted it to the courts, and the courts agreed. I mean, we were going to have to stay open, and for people that might get arrested during this time, we had to have places to segregate them. Obviously, we couldn't take you in off the street and put you in a cell pod. If you were sick or you did have the virus, you're going to infect, 18 to 24 other people immediately, depending on what cell block you went in. So the courts agreed, and we released, between March 9th and March 31st, we released 136 inmates, all low-level offenders. Most of those offenders were in here for probation violation, possession of whatever drug you want to choose, but they were low-level, non-violent offenders. We got hit up a lot about that initially. I can't believe you're letting all these people out. And I certainly see that side. I'm in the business of running the jail. I don't want criminals to be free. I want the community to be safe. But these were all low-level offenders. Anybody that was in here for a violent crime, an invasion of privacy, a battery, a domestic battery, anything like that, they were not released unless they posted their bond. So it worked. It's continued to work. There has been some reoffenses. People got out. They, kind of their get out of jail free card, but they got out and they reoffended. nobody, I don't think any of us thought that, we're going to release 136 people and, everything's going to be hunky dory from here on out. But overall, the large percentage, it worked. So we're down. I mean, today right now, as we sit here, we have a population of 114. We got down to, I think 88 was the lowest we got. But today we're sitting at 114. And just to give you a kind of a percentage, last year at this time, we averaged 219 people per day in the jail last July. So that's good and bad. I mean, we're open now. We will take any offense. Anybody that gets arrested, we'll take them, providing we have room in intake. Because once you come into our jail right now, you're segregated in intake in an individual cell for 24 to 96 hours. It depends on how you answer the questions and what your charges, what you're being charged with. After that time, if you don't bond out or if you're not released, you'll go into a separate pod, and then you'll be in that pod for 14 days, and then you're moved into a regular housing pod. So we're still taking this very serious. To date, we have not had a positive COVID case in the jail. I hope to continue that, but I don't know I'm going to be fortunate forever. So we're doing everything we possibly can to, to keep all the inmates, the staff, and the visitors safe. So far, what we've done has worked. It's worked well. But the downside initially, we took a lot of flack over, releasing that many offenders, even though they were low-level offenders. Now the state came out about, a month later. I mean, there was pending lawsuit litigation to make jails release people. We were just ahead of the curve, and I'm fine with that. I'm glad that we have a great relationship with the courts. Several sheriffs don't, they don't get along. We do, and I'm very thankful for that. So, I think what we did worked, and, I don't think the community was ever in danger of anybody that we released early. And that's kind of it as far as the COVID front in the jail. But it certainly, it has disrupted our day-to-day operations. The courts as well, they're taking a lot of precautions. We're doing a lot more video visits. The courts have slowed down tremendously. It's creating a backlog of getting people into court, trials and things like that. But everybody's doing the best they can. It's kind of uncharted territory. It is uncharted territory of where are we going to be, and how are we going to, move forward past this. We did get notice of our first quote unquote COVID lawsuit last week, which I find astonishing because we haven't had COVID in the jail, but we've had one inmate serve us with pending litigation that we might be sued for our response to COVID. So we'll see how it is. What goes from there. That's part of it, but I do think everything that we've done has been the right thing, and we have a great staff. Everybody's picked it up and went above and beyond during this time. So I'll be happy to answer any questions about the jail, the COVID response, anything in general pertaining to law enforcement, if anybody has any.
Sheriff, have there been any incidents, any serious incidents resulting from the folks that were released?
To my knowledge, no. I know we've had several, reoffend. When I say reoffend, they've been dealt with for another possession charge, driving without a license, things like that. I haven't went. I would have heard about it. I feel quite confident. There has been no serious charges with anybody that we've released that I know of.
Sheriff, this is Elizabeth Justice, and I just want to really commend you for being ahead of the curve and for being proactive and for saying people closely confined in a local county jail are at high risk for this COVID problem. And I know it had to be a tough decision to make, but I've been, I stay up on the lawyer publications, and I was surprised that the state didn't take any steps, but put it back at the local level to make those decisions. So I think you all did the very best you could. And I just wonder, what testing capacity do you have both for people who are arrested and maybe your officers and staff if they get exposed? What are you doing on that?
We have we have another very close relationship with the health department. So, Dr. Douglas and Amber have been absolutely phenomenal to work with on any case. If we have an exposure or a possible exposure, we have a nurse on site, 40 hours a week at the jail. That's contracted through Advanced Correctional Health Care. So we have that Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. We have medical personnel here. That helps. If we have any kind of possible exposure, we contact the health department, and either Amber or Adrian or Dr. Douglas, they cut through layers of red tape and push the front. We've had we've had 6 or 7 staff tested as precautionary measures. And fortunately, we've had no positive cases of staff or inmates.
Sheriff, what has the pandemic caused in terms of policing? What changes in procedure for your deputies?
Well, initially, when everything started really happening, mid to late March, I think everybody was in panic mode for the most part. Our calls for service went down dramatically. We just weren't getting the routine calls that we normally would get. Of course, everybody was home, so our theft calls and our burglary calls went down tremendously, and I attribute some of that to everybody was home. Mom or dad were home, all the kids were home, everything was shut down. So we had a lot of extra eyes and ears out there that for our benefit. Now that lasted, I would say, 6 to 7 weeks. Things started picking back up slowly. I would say we're averaging about back to normal calls right now. But it's, initially the response, our precaution was, if we could handle it over the phone, we were handling it over the phone. There was no need to come into your house, and have that interaction if we didn't have to. Now we've certainly, and I'll be the first to say, I hate policing like that. If people call the police or the sheriff for a reason, I believe there's a lot to be said for that face-to-face contact, that handshake, and that mutual meeting. That's starting to come back now, but it's a call-by-call basis, really. The standing order with the deputies is, and they have a lot of leeway with this. If you think you're going to be put in harm's way, health reasons why, don't go in. Have them come out, maintain social distancing and things like that. But our activity's back to normal, pretty much back to normal right now.
Are your deputies, are they wearing masks and that sort of thing when they're in contact with the public in a call like that?
It depends on the call. I'll tell you that all of our staff have PPE equipment, where they can have masks, face shields, eyeglasses, obviously gloves. It's a call-by-call basis. If it's a serious call, none of them are pulling over on the side of the road and getting suited up, to go to it. They get there, and make that quick visual. And then it's their discretion. If they think they need a mask and protective gear, they put it on. unfortunately, sometimes we just don't have time to do that. I mean, due to the nature of the call or, what's occurring at that time.
Sheriff, do you see any issues with the mask requirements in the stores and people wanting to fight that and causing troubles?
I saw a lot of it last night, on social media. I mean, a lot of frustration with Walmart and then Kroger, soon after that. I don't put a lot of stock into social media. I look at it. I do. I don't post. I don't have conversations on there because, it's black and white, but there's a whole lot of gray. I mean, what's your intent? So I post very few things. Time will tell. I don't think we're going to have a big uprising. I'm thankful for the community that we live in, and that I work in. We're shielded a lot from the big city problems that we've seen across the nation. For I think several reasons, but people get irritated, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all have our personal opinions of wear one, don't wear one. But I don't think we'll have a big uprising, if you will, of people doing anything silly because of a mask requirement. I certainly hope not anyway.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Anybody else have any questions for the sheriff?
This is Morris Mills. I can throw a comment. My guess is it's easier for the store to make the requirement than for the law enforcement people to make it because, you wear the mask or you don't come in, period.
Absolutely. We've taken that stance from the get-go. When masks were suggested, and now they're required. That's not really a policing issue. I mean, none of my guys or gals are going to pull you over and give you a citation for not wearing a mask. We're not going to stop you from going into the store. If the store chooses that's their right. You just have to make that determination of I'm going to go into Walmart or I'm going to go to somewhere else that doesn't make me wear one. That's your decision and the store's decision. But yeah, we won't be standing outside the storefronts with, making sure everybody, has a mask on.
Sheriff, I had a question that's not exactly related to this, but you talked about traffic stops and things like that. If someone has a valid carry permit and is in their vehicle and they get pulled over, maybe it's the cell phone issue or something else, how should the person that has the permit and the weapon respond to the officer? Should they, can you tell me about that?
Sure. And that's a very good question. We do our handgun safety class here, and I went the instructor course 6 years ago, and I've been fortunate to meet several people teaching those classes, and that question always comes up. What I suggest, whether you have a gun or not, is to keep your hands on the steering wheel. 95% of the time when you get stopped, the officer doesn't know who you are. If your windows are tinted, I can't see you when we pass the opposite way, and I certainly can't see when I'm parked behind you. If your windows are tinted or obstructed, keep your hands on the wheel and just try to remain calm and wait for the officer to get up there. My suggestion is always tell the officer, I just want you to know I have a firearm in the vehicle. It's in the glove box. It's in the console. It's on my hip. It's in the trunk. That way there's no surprises. That's when most bad things happen is on traffic stops. If you're reaching for your registration or your insurance card and you pop open the console or you open up the glove box and now there's a gun that drops out or it's right there within reach, it makes everybody uneasy. It makes me uneasy. I've seen that many, many times. And you just don't know, what is the intention? Are you trying to hide that from me? Or are you did you just forget all those things could happen. But I always recommend, and I always say this, I mean, you're not required to inform the officer. You're not. You are under no obligation to say, I have that firearm. But my recommendation is tell the officer up front. You know, I mean, it just reduces that stress level. I've got a pistol in the glove compartment. I've got a pistol on my hip. And that 90% of the time, that's going to alleviate any issues with that at all. So I hope that helps and answers that.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. I did have one other question. I saw an article, and it was talking about how the jails are sanitizing the cells and the pods. And I was wondering, do you all have any of that more advanced sanitation technology like the ultraviolet?
Currently, we do not. You know, that is a new big thing that's certainly hitting correctional facilities. We've looked at it. I mean, of course, you know, we've been bombarded with emails and pamphlets and flyers on things like that. I don't know enough about it. I'm assuming as I sit here that works. I can't vouch for it, but what I know is it's very expensive. We looked at one to possibly, you know, for them to come give us a demonstration, and it was by no means the deluxe model. I mean, it was the medium model that, you know, would handle what we needed to do. And the price tag on that was $39,000. That's a pretty big expense for a jail our size. If it worked, I think it would be great. But in talking with the health department and, you know, the people with a lot more knowledge about these things than me, you know, the normal old bleach water, he said, you know, you can buy a lot of bleach for $40,000. And again, I hate to say it. I mean, you know, what we've done so far has worked. We take pride in keeping our facility spotless and sanitized. But we're still exploring that option. You know, I mean, I suspect, you know, as this goes on and, you know, more and more companies start making these things, that the price will go down. And it would be nice to have if they were. I just don't have $40,000 sitting freely in my budget to where I can go buy one today.
Okay, well, I appreciate that comment. I worked at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami for many years, and we had those robotic ultraviolet cleaning devices. And you were talking about the very low end at 39,000, but the units that we had were very, very effective. But there's a big learning curve, and obviously the expense was a major issue. So thanks for your comment.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback and your knowledge on those.
Brian, it's Brian Donaldson here.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, any idea when you're going to start allowing visits again for inmates?
Visits with attorneys or visits with family or?
Family.
Family, we've opened the lobby back up.
Is it okay?
So it was, I want to say July 6th is, and it might have been July of when we officially, quote unquote, opened the lobby back up. So people can, they're allowed to come back into the lobby now to do those visitations.
Okay.
You do a temperature checks?
Not for visitors. I mean, all the visitations are done over a call box, a video box. So there's no face-to-face, and there's certainly not, there are no contact visits. So, you know, you can come into our lobby and pick up a video phone, and whatever cell pod the inmate's in, they pick up their video box. So it's all done kind of like this. I mean, it's a virtual visit, if you would.
People come through a day wanting to do that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
How many people will come through each day wanting to do that?
Well, I tell you, you know, I mean, it varies. You know, during the week and the weekends, of course, our count's down, you know, right now too. But there'll be times there'll be 35, 40 people here at visitation time to do a visit. So there's a lot of visits that are completed on the call boxes.
Hi, this is Dennis Coons. I got a question with the new law of cell phone usage in the cars and things like that.
Mhm.
It's kind of frustrating to me that we have to have these, ought to be common sense rules made into laws, because I
100%.
I could barely run the radio and the DVD player for the grandkids and drive. So it's like, it's a total distraction to me, and
Sure.
I don't get it. But I see it more and more. You stop at a stoplight and you're waiting for the car to go in front of you, and their heads down looking at a text. I know that's what they're doing, but how in the world are you going to enforce something like that? I've got obviously modern cars that have Bluetooth and that kind of thing, but a lot of people can't afford those, and the general population is probably not in that category.
Sure.
But I also work in retail, and people can't come to the register at a retail setting without having their phone. It's like they can't operate without. How are you going to stop every car that's out there with a violation like that? I understand it's for the safety, but it's also ridiculous that we don't have any common sense anymore.
I know what you said. There's no way we can enforce all of that.
Oh, no.
The majority of the time, I don't know a percentage, but based on, when I used to do traffic enforcement, and it's been years. I sit at this desk now. I get that, but whether it's speeding or going through the stop sign or talking on your cell phone, oftentimes, getting stopped and just having that conversation with that person is enough enforcement. I certainly know it was when I was 17 and I got stopped for the first time. I didn't get a ticket. I got a stern talking to, and that was an eye opener. And our guys are, I don't foresee them out there, trying to see how many, we've written no tickets on that since that law became in effect July 1st. Not to say that we won't at some point, but that is not, when we just don't have we're not big enough to do everything we need to do. We have 16 guys that are on patrol on 4 shifts, so, if the shift is full, we've got 4 guys out there and gals on a shift. But by the time you factor in vacation and holidays and training and all that other stuff, we're usually down to 3 people. And we just don't have time. Today the radio has been going all day long. So there's been no traffic enforcement today because they've just been going from call to call to call. But it's tough. When they came out with the texting law a few years ago, it was virtually impossible to enforce. I've got to be able to prove that you're texting. It was okay for you to be looking at a map, on your phone, but not to text. I don't know that we wrote a single ticket off that law to begin with, but common sense would come into play. And I agree with your statement. It's unfortunate that we have to have a law like that, but it's the way it is.
I was going to ask a follow-up question on the no holding cell phones question. So, Sheriff, I've read that a lot of accidents are caused by distracted drivers. Has that been your experience in the county?
I would say the overwhelming majority. Whether it's a cell phone or whether it's simply not paying attention. There's a passenger in the car, or you're daydreaming while driving. We've all done that. I do it coming to work, and I certainly do it going home. Thinking about everything that happened today and everything that's happening tomorrow. But certainly, cell phones certainly contribute to this. You can't go anywhere and not, whether it's a restaurant, a game, a conference, whatever. People live and die by their phones now. It certainly is a distraction that just becomes more and more troublesome, you know, I mean, as we go. So I look, you know, sooner or later, I mean, technology's there. I mean, I think that we'll see, you know, soon that if you're moving and the phone can verify that you're driving, it's going to be off limits. I mean, I don't think your phone will work, you know, unless it's receive a call. I think we'll see that before we see complete compliance with people putting it down and not breaking the new law.
Sheriff, I had another question. What would you say the number one and number two calls that you all receive are?
You know, I mean, we're back to, you know, certainly drug enforcement is, you know, that's probably the number one, number two, and number three calls that we get. You know, our overdoses have certainly spiked. I mean, and they go in spurts. But I mean, it's hard to give a percentage. I mean, it would be a very high percentage. You know, I'm going to say 85 to 90% of all of our calls are somehow drug related. You know, whether it's a domestic, a theft, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's centered around drugs. You know, whether you're stealing to, you know, to buy that next bag, or you're in a fight because you're coming off that high. Most of our calls are drug related. You know, after that, it would be hard to say. Probably crashes are the number, you know, but between drug calls and vehicle crashes right now, those are probably the two main things that we respond to, I would say.
Thanks very much. Those are unfortunate circumstances.
Very unfortunate.
Sheriff, how many of your calls relate to child issues or child endangerment issues or family issues with children that are ended up getting DCS involved? And I know you have to get involved in some of those cases too.
Sure. You know, it's hard to put a number on that, but it's certainly weekly that we're receiving calls like that. Now we're part of a national organization. We have two detectives that belong to the ICAC team. So, you know, whether they're getting an email from the state or the federal authorities, whether DCS is contacting us for assistance, or whether that call just comes through here first, I would say, you know, probably 3 to 4 a week. Now, a lot of those pan out to be nothing. You know, I mean, because you got to filter through that. You know, I mean, what it could be, you know, mom and dad going through a divorce, and those things happen all the time. You know, I mean, where one parent will call in on the other parent, you know, a false allegation. So those do happen frequently. But the community's been better too. I mean, you know, I mean, we get a lot of community calls. Hey, I'd like you to look into this. You know, there may not be anything to it, and a lot of times there's not. But you know, children pull at people's hearts in a special kind of way. So I'm thankful that we do live in that community where people will call in and trust us enough to go look into that and verify that there is no issue. Far too often, though. I mean, that's probably the best way to answer that is far too often. But you know, to put a number on it, I would say 3 to 4 a week is typically what we deal with.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Ryan, would you mind taking a minute and talking about the new trial rule 26 this year, the book and release, how that's affected you at the jail?
Sure. Right. Yeah. So, you know, so what Brian's talking about, you know, the state came out with the book and release, you know, criminal rule 26. There's been a lot of talk on it, you know, nationwide. The state came out late. Well, I mean, you know, this has been ongoing for quite some time. And the state last year, you know, kind of, you know, as they typically do, that, you know, they pushed this onto the counties and said, you should implement some type of criminal rule 26 procedure. So in essence, what that is, if you commit a crime, a low-level crime, you get arrested, you get brought to jail, and you're immediately released. We'll take your prints, we'll take your picture, we'll get your booking information, and then you're released immediately. There's all kinds of feelings on this, both ways, good and bad. Our team met, Brian was on the team, I was on the team, the judges, probation, the prosecutor. We've tried to hash this out as best we can. And I don't know that when all of us sit there, if we all agree on everything, but again, we're told this is going to happen. I mean, so we made it happen. We've altered this a little bit, to kind of tell you what Montgomery County's doing. Any level 6 felony or below is pretty much a book and release. Level 6 is, probably the best, your low level thefts. If I walk into Walmart and steal a pair of jeans or a tank top or, a fishing pole, and walk out and I get arrested, I'm going to be brought to jail, booked in and released. Level 5s and above, the more serious felonies, you're booked in and you have to post a bond or appear in front of the judge, and the judge will make that determination as to whether you're going to remain in jail or be released. At first, our first stance, well, I don't want to say our first, the first stance on it is that if you got arrested and you got released, if you got rearrested during that time frame while your case was pending, you were going to sit in jail. With the theory being that, you're showing the court that you're not going to abide by the rules the court set forth. There were differing opinions as to how well that was going to work. I never thought it was going to work to begin with, because we have so many probation violations. It's tougher here in Montgomery County to do probation because we have a very good probation department. They go out and work. So I never thought, if we're not going to charge them, if there's not going to be a penalty for getting arrested and we're just going to release you, I still don't understand, the thought process of they're not going to go out and commit another offense and or show up to court. Because we had so many failure to appears prior to, people would pay $1,000 bond and not show up to court. Neither here nor there. That has since been changed to where now if you get arrested and you're released, if your case is pending and you get rearrested, you're released again, providing that's a level 6 or below. And then the court's going to make that determination whether to issue a warrant for you. We're going to come pick you back up and hold you, or you're going to have to pay a bond. And I don't know that we still, there'll probably be additional changes coming, I would think. And Brian, I don't know what your opinion is, but we were just starting to get into this when COVID happened. So we don't have real good data that, hey, this is working great or it's not working at all. COVID has screwed that up tremendously. So I can't say that, it works 100%. And I can't say that it doesn't work 100%, because since March, things have just been different. Now, I will say that even with this criminal rule of 26, if you get arrested for a violent crime, domestic battery, an alcohol offense, you're going to sit in jail. The domestic battery time, you're going to sit at least 8 hours. What they call a cooling off period. So, the operating while intoxicated, the alcohol offenses, we find out what your blood alcohol content is when you come in the door, and then we have a chart. So you're going to sit here, at the minimum 4 hours, up to 24 hours before we can release you, based on how intoxicated you are. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And there's all kinds of differing views on this. I would be happy to try to answer any question if anybody has any specific about that. Or
Sheriff, I have one more question, and that's going to be my quote, I think, for the month or the year. Does the county currently use or have plans to use facial recognition technology?
did you say does the county?
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Okay, we do not have facial recognition. You know, again, there's a lot of technology out there that I'm sure it's great technology. I just don't have the budget for it. And then, you know, the biggest issue with getting that technology is the maintenance and the upkeep with that technology. You know, body cameras were a huge topic a couple of years ago. And nobody ever discussed that. I mean, I can go get a camera fairly cheap, but it's storing all that data. You know, that's where the money's at. And you know, now I will tell you that all of our patrol deputies do have in-car cameras and body cameras as of February of this year. It's been a great experience. That the deputies love it. You know, it cuts down on so many bogus complaints. They're not a cure-all by any means, but you know, the safety aspect of it and the accountability aspect of it on both sides. You know, certainly as the administrator and also as the deputy, everybody here is sold on our cameras. We got great ones. They work, but that was a very expensive purchase, and the upkeep on it. You know, that's where all that stuff comes into play. So, and that's kind of a long-winded answer. I apologize for that, but we do not have it. You know, if we need something like that, and we've needed it before, we always reach out to the state police or, you know, one of our federal partners, and they're always more than willing to assist us if we need help with that.
Thank you. And you anticipated my follow-up with reference to that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from anybody?
I have another question. And Mark, I think you've asked fewer than I have, so keep going. But my question is, you know, we're all aware of the death of Floyd George and the issues about police brutality. And I think in Montgomery County, it's always been a priority to educate officers about the appropriate use of force. Has there been any increased training or discussion among officers about how to just make sure appropriate levels of force are being used?
You know, and that's a tricky topic too. You know, I mean, and that's because I remember coming up through the ranks, and you know, somebody would do something, and the next thing you know, you get a blanket email or a blanket policy, and it's like, just deal with the problem. You know, I mean, why am I being punished? So I'm having to, I mean, I think we have 25 deputies, you know, from me down. I think I have the best staff in the state. We're not perfect, but you know, there's and I don't mean this derogatory towards anybody, but there is such a difference in, you know, sheriff's offices versus state police or city police. Our mentality is just different. And again, I don't mean that bad in any way, shape, or form, but our staff know, you know, I mean, and this certainly started under Sheriff Castile when I was under him. You know, first and foremost, we're going to treat people with respect. You know, you might get told no, you might get told something that you don't agree with. You might get called out, but we're going to explain that to you. This is why the answer is no. This is why we're not going to do this, or this is why we are going to do it. We have very few use of force incidents throughout the year, but a lot of that goes to the community. You know, I mean, the opportunities are surely there. But our guys, I mean, if we can talk to you first and gain compliance that way, then that's what we're going to do. I mean, I remember being brand new, you know, and you wanted to drive fast and get in the bar fights, and Not anymore. I mean, once you reach the age of 40, driving fast and fighting, they're not nearly as appealing. But I will say this too, the county commissioners and the county council have been, from the moment I came back with Mark, our training fund has always been sufficient. Certainly better than most. It could be better. Don't get me wrong. There's never enough money. There's never enough manpower, but our training funds have always been sufficient. We stress that to the guys, throughout the year. 24 hours is the current state mandate for each officer. You have to have 24 hours of continuing education. I would say that our officers average 50 to 60 hours each year. So we take it very serious. I've had a lot of discussions internally with our shift commanders and even the shifts too. There's a lot of uneasy feelings right now amongst the ranks, and it concerns me. It concerns me for our 4 or 5 year deputies, and we've got a handful that are watching all this unfold, and I know they're thinking, I don't want to do this. I can find a easier way to make a living. And that's very concerning as the sheriff. We spend a lot of time and money invested in people to get them hired and get them out on the road. It's different here. It is different here. But what happens in Chicago can certainly happen in Crawfordsville at any point in time. And it's, I think it's a legitimate concern. Our guys are worried, about their careers, about their pension, about, their family safety. It's a real concern. But training, we certainly always go above and beyond on training. And our guys and gals, I couldn't be more proud of, how they interact with people. Especially now that we all have cameras. I don't have time. I don't do it. But I could go back and watch every call, and listen to it and watch that interaction. I haven't seen one yet, in the ones that I've watched where I've been like, probably shouldn't have said that, probably shouldn't have acted that way. Those things happen, and that's, I've explained that to several people. Police use of force always looks bad. It never looks good. If we have to use of force on you to take you under control, it doesn't look good. I don't care if it's an armbar takedown, if it's a strike from a baton, if it's a taser, it doesn't look good. So we certainly try to keep that to a minimum. And I don't think any of our guys would step out of bounds on something like that.
How often do you run into a confrontational arrest where the guy resists or raises a cane or?
We had one Friday night. That's the last one that I know of. Last Friday night. And it's really not very often. Most people comply. By the grace of God. Most people still comply with us. There's probably a number of different reasons why, but it's hard to put a number on things like that. But maybe once a month, we have a resisting or somebody that's actually fighting us out on the street.
Sheriff, kind of following up on Elizabeth's question, a lot of police departments, or at least the people, are talking about having mental health professionals available for the police and for the calls that you may be on. Do you see something like that happening, or do we have a need for that?
Well, there's certainly a need. I run the biggest mental health facility in the county. Be it with the inmates. There's a huge need there. Now, the Indiana Sheriff's Association has come out with virtual meetings for any of my employees that want to log in and, get free mental health guidance. Some of the stuff that's being proposed nationally, they're not all terrible ideas, but you know, we started the JCAP program within the jail, you know, about a year ago. You know, we're partnered with Valley Oaks. You know, so we have biweekly meetings with them and the team, you know, and it's the same thing I hear from everybody else that I talk to. We can't find help. You know, I mean, that's the overwhelming, you know, majority. I mean, you know, there's not a 50 people over in the bullpen, you know, waiting to come out the door to be mental health counselors. That's our biggest issue, you know, and I mean, it falls within the inmates more than it does us. I mean, we have 2 right now that are, you know, I mean, I can't tell you their names, but they're 100% mental cases. They should not be in my jail, but there's nowhere else for them to go. And excuse me, they, you know, they get bogged down in here. You know, again, COVID hasn't helped anything because so many facilities across the state have said, we're not taking new people. I get that to an extent, but you know, I mean, these guys were both in my jail before COVID started. They've been in my jail since. They've been in isolation since. You know, they're COVID free. I mean, you know, there needs to be, you know, a common sense approach to, you know, these people are fine to be transported somewhere else, but you know, it's finding bed space. There's, you know, and I'm speaking for all 92 sheriffs. I mean, you know, this is a problem across the board for every county jail in the state of Indiana. You know, they're safer here than what they are on the street, but my staff is not trained or equipped to deal with mental cases. So, you know, we certainly need more funding at the state and federal level to increase those facilities and, you know, and increase that tremendously.
What about the need for taking a mental health professional on a call for something? You know, something's going on and whatever it be, but you know, you have a situation like a George Floyd or something like that where you may need some additional experience. Is that something that you see in the future, or is that something you think you need?
It would be nice to have. It would certainly be nice to have, you know, to have a trained professional counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, whichever one they are. I don't see that happening. You know, I mean, you know, those calls, when we go to those calls, they are 100% completely unstable. I mean, you know, things are fine right now, and at a split second, I mean, they go from being peaceful to being angry to being combative to, you know, they're not safe environments. And I cannot comprehend that, you know, some of these places are proposing that, you know, we're not even going to send the police to those calls. They're going to send the social worker or the fire department or somebody else. That's not going to last long. You know, I mean, you know, somebody's going to get killed. And, I mean, the fire department here, they respond to those calls, but they don't make the scene until law enforcement makes the scene safe. So, you know, and it comes down to, you know, I mean, if you're that counselor with me and I've got to drive you there or wait on you to get there, I mean, obviously your assessment and your skill set is going to require a lot more time than what mine would. And there's times that there's only 2 people working the whole county. You know, I mean, we have to prioritize, and unfortunately, we don't have that 4 to 6 hour block that truly needs to be given to that person. You know, I mean, you know, we're the triage. You know, I mean, we're going to put the Band-Aid on it, you know, get that problem fixed and go to the next call. So, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's a horrible idea, but I don't see how that's ever going to work to send a person like that into a call like that. I mean, it just, you know, they're too volatile and they change at the drop of a hat. And, you know, I mean, I think that's going to get some innocent people hurt. That's right. That's my honest opinion about it. But, you know, time will tell.
Well, Sheriff, we told you that we would be done by 1 o'clock. We've run a little bit over. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to speak to us, particularly on such a short notice. I think I speak for the entire group that, we really do appreciate what you and your entire department does for the community and for the county. I think you guys do a great job. And unfortunately, I don't think you get enough credit for it. So please accept our thanks for everything that you and your deputies and your jail staff does, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. I truly enjoy the interaction like this, so thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for having me.
And by the way, for your first Zoom meeting, you did great.
Well, thank you. I tracked all, but it's I'm anxious to to get back into the conference room setting.
Okay. All right, next week, our speaker will be Dr. Scott Douglas from the Montgomery County Health Department. I'm sure he will have something to say about this whole COVID thing, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about it. So reach out this week to some of